What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcasts. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bring incredible guests from all over the world, so sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is an adventurer, an acquisition entrepreneur, and business turnaround expert. Joining us all the way from the UK, please welcome Adrian Knight. Adrian, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Deanna. It's an absolute honor to be here. It really is.
You've done some impressive things with your career, I guess. I mean, you're a career entrepreneur, business turnaround coach. I want to start with this story because I was like, oh, this is amazing. You bought your first company for €1 and received over 100,000 from that business over a 24-month period. I want to know what you're doing right that other people are not.
I know. Well, the precursor to that was having around 12 failed startups. I was and am a terrible startup entrepreneur, and I've realised over the course of my entrepreneurial journey through sheer persistence that there are different flavours of entrepreneurs. And I definitely am not a startup one. But the world of acquisitions and buying an established business had always spoke volumes to me. And it was when I discovered that I was going to be a dad, when we was expecting the birth of my daughter, who's now 4 years old, that I decided something had to change. I had this sort of soon-to-be beautiful little girl coming into our world, and I had to do something from a career perspective because I had a business, I had several employees, but I wasn't making any money. And so I started off on this new journey of buying and selling businesses, and I worked very hard, but I felt I had quite a few lucky breaks and bought my first company. I've bought several since, but my first company I bought for £1. And I sold that just under 24 months later for 6 figures. My biggest mistake with that was that I should have sold it much sooner. I should have sold it within 6 months. So that was a great learning curve.
So I think that's very interesting. So you realized very quickly that startup is not your thing. So did you identify why you failed at startups versus turning businesses around or acquiring other businesses?
Yeah, it's because of me. Like, I was always the bottleneck. So, so I'm the type of person, like more of a visionary type person. So I can see things like this is where we want to go, and I can understand why we want to go there, and I can rally people around me to start going in that direction. But when starting a business, that's great at the very beginning. But there comes a point where there's a different skill set. You've got the monotony of the day-to-day, of the building systems, of building the infrastructure in a business so that it actually is a business. And every single time, that's where I fell flat on my face, quite spectacularly in a few occasions. But the world of acquisitions and buying businesses is very different because you're going into an established business that already has that framework. It already has the infrastructure. In many cases, it already has a team of people as well, but it's got some problems. And the role that I play, and that plays much better to my skill set, is going in and it's using that sort of creative vision type skill set to see what the problems are, look for creative ways on solving them, and normally backing that with quite a bit of energy. So going in and in many cases causing a bit of chaos to disturb all of the cobwebs and the old ways of doing things that needed to change, and to get everything sort of down into a new place, like the systems working in a new way, but then to step back and either to sell the business or let other people run that for you.
Yeah. No, I love that. Thank you for that explanation. And so at what point after acquiring these businesses and then becoming were you a business turnaround expert then, or did you learn that over time of acquiring different businesses?
It was definitely over time. So I never would have thought of myself as a turnaround person, but having acquired so many companies since that very first one, and don't get me wrong, I've had some real train wrecks in there, some real disasters, but I've learned a lot from those. But equally, there's been some successes. So I'm just going through a process of selling a recent acquisition right now, which I'm expecting to close over the next 3 to 4 weeks. And that was a business that I bought last October, but that had a lot of very big problems that we managed to sort of turn around and then go straight into an exit process.
Oh, wow. So are there some common, I think a turnaround expert is like a huge deal because, I mean, I know my late husband's ex-wife did that. And so she would go into businesses and try to turn them around. I don't think she was very successful all the time, but she would do that. And that takes quite a bit of like homework when you get in there because you got to dig into everything. And that takes definitely a special skill set to really find the missing or the weak areas in the business. And so do you focus on any specific type or industry, or does it matter?
At the beginning I did, because there's so much to learn when buying a business. I didn't want to go into a new sector. So it was you sort of like learning on two fronts. And I felt that would set me up for failure. And I was quite fed up of failing by at that point. Yeah. So at the beginning, I focused on the sectors I knew where I could speak the language, I could build rapport with the owners of those businesses, but then I could figure my way out through the process of buying a business. Having done quite a few now, and they have been in different sectors, it kind of expanded from there. I look at opportunities in a variety of sectors, not necessarily every sector, because I've also learned some lessons about what sort of business models are more appealing and which ones aren't as well. But it is a little bit more agnostic, yeah.
When now all these different businesses that you've had a hand in turning around, is there a common thread that these leaders are missing that why they need you?
Yeah, so there are some common threads. I think that's a brilliant question. The number one common thread, and no one really wants to hear this if you're looking at buying businesses, but the number one common thread is that when you buy a business, I can promise you with everything that's dear in my life, there will be so many problems in that business. And the very reason the seller is looking to sell is because of these problems. And a lot of those problems are self-inflicted, and a lot of them are from a place of ignorance, like they don't know what they don't know, and a lack of skill and everything that comes with that. And so people who look at buying businesses, I've sort of learned over the years, because I've sort of mentored and coached a few people in sort of doing this, is that it can be quite easy to go in with rose-tinted glasses. This business is going to be great and fantastic, and I can see all the things that I can do with it, but they don't really want to look at maybe the downside on why the owner's selling and what that actually means. And to your point that you mentioned just a moment ago, there's two ways of buying a business. One of them is doing a load of due diligence before physically taking on the business, which I always do, but you come up against some natural bottlenecks there. And I'll give you an example. So the last acquisition that I done in October, I had a team of 10 people, and we were getting deep into the financials, but we hit this roadblock where the questions that we were asking, the owners physically didn't have the answers. Like, they just didn't know. And so they weren't not giving us the answers, they just didn't know it. And that would have been the deal, like it would have been dead in the water there. And so the way I tend to buy businesses is I approach it from a slightly different angle. So I do my due diligence, but I also understand that I'm going into a business that's going to have loads of problems, and a lot of the questions I have, the owners aren't going to have the answers for me. And if they do have the answers, sometimes I want to give them and sometimes they don't. So, what do you do in this situation? So I tend to get, again, quite creative to how the deal is structured. So with the last acquisition, I put in practically no money up front. Really no, it's a tiny little amount, more of a token gesture, and it came from a previous acquisition. So it was nothing personally, but I structured the deal so that if any of these sort of nasties, or if any of these problems turns into a nasty that's going to cost money, then that would be taken away from the money that was owed to the seller. And as such, that's very much what happened. We had some major like costs associated on the back end of that, but it didn't actually cost like us anything because it came off the seller's side rather than ours.
So how many businesses do you purchase and turn around in 1 year? Do you multiply?
I mean, I normally do sort of 2 or 3. I mean, the last 18 months to 2 years, I've taken a slightly different approach because I've also used this skill set to build a small group of companies in the children's education sector. So we have 17 employees. We educate just under 10,000 under 5-year-olds every academic term. And that grew very quickly, like literally within 24 months, just purely through acquisitions and doing some turnaround pieces. So that's been more of a pet love more than anything else. But it's sort of a mixture.
What was your drive behind starting that? Because it says that you want to take it to the London Stock Exchange.
Yes, it was all my daughter. Like all of this, I look back to that little girl who's often putting me in my place, and it was all her. So like when we had Evie, it started to, like a lot of new parents, rocks your world, and it started to expose me to this whole new world that I was completely ignorant about before having children. And I was just fascinated, and because we were going to so many like different classes and different experiences, the whole thing felt very disjointed. Certainly in the UK, there was no like seamless experience that was focused around the development, like really the core development of the children. It seemed to be more about fill up a class and like they the owners of that. And so I just wanted to do something a little, I say a little different, but it wasn't and isn't just about the money. Like it's about something more than that. So
well, that's beautiful. What a perfect reason to start something,
Yeah, it's nice because it's so close to her age. So the business has grown along with her. I'm just looking forward to when she's like 18 or 21. And...
Oh my gosh, I love it. That's awesome. Now, do you work with only look for companies in the UK, or do you work with companies all over?
I've done companies all over. So I've been very active in the US market as well. I've always, to put it this way, ever since I was a small boy, all my friends and family used to say I was an American born in the wrong country. So
really?
I've always got an American flag on my wall right there, and I've always had this great love for the US. And so over the course of my years, I've spent a lot of time in the US, not just traveling about, but I've spent quite a bit of time in California and Florida, and looking to have a more like substantial base in probably in Florida, I would have thought. But so as part
Florida's a good choice.
Yes, absolutely. California, it's leaning towards Florida. So I've always, in my entrepreneurial career, I've always made a conscious and proactive effort to build networks in the US as well as the UK, and where possible to help bridge between the two.
Yeah, I love it. So how do you find these businesses? Do people come to you? Because I didn't see a website for you.
This is just it. So when I started, I was the one approaching people, and one of the secrets to buying your first business, because it's always the hardest, is that the deal, like the business you end up buying, is almost certainly in your phone book. Like it's almost certainly within your network, because it's a trust-based process. In the early days, I was approaching people, but then it very quickly started to change, where now there's this, like, the inquiries come to myself, even though he said, I don't have a website or anything like that. They sort of find you, really, normally because they had a friend or they heard of someone and went through that way.
And so what's that process look like if someone reaches out to you and says, hey, we're interested in selling our business. I've heard about you. I've heard nothing but good things. What does that look like when they do contact you?
So I tend to spend, I don't really look, it sort of goes against like common sense, but I don't look too much at the business. I tend to spend more time with the owner of that business and understanding, you know, where they're at, why they're looking to sell, not what they tell me, but I really want to understand, like, why now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why now? What are the problems? What's going on? And that relationship with the owner is just so important, because even after you bought the business, I mean, I spend quite a lot of time just going out for dinners and coffees with the previous owners of businesses that I've bought to maintain that relationship. But also, you know, in many cases, they've got the 15 or 20 years worth of knowledge in their brains. And so if I have a question, it could be the quickest sort of way of getting a solution could be just to actually sit down with them, have a coffee and say, hey, what about this? And then they tell you something that is completely, like, it happened 10 years ago and it had a knock-on effect, and that's why it is the way it is. So yeah, it's all about that relationship with the sellers.
Well, for sure. And I'm sure it's probably a hard transition too for some of these entrepreneurs, the business owners, is because it's typically their baby. And, you know, they've come up against, you know, they've grown it to a point where they're either losing money because they don't know how to control their costs, or just manage their people, right? Because they're spending money on labor where they're not getting their ROI. I know, we used to have five businesses. Two of them we had payroll, and, you know, we had manufacturing. And so I would always watch our profit margin. If our profit margin started to shrink, I knew that something was going on with the parts usage and our labor. Because in order to, you know, I had it all figured out. So I get it. And that was our baby, you know, that was our baby. And we had people approach us to purchase us because we were a necessary manufacturing facility, because they wanted to do OE manufacturing for Ford. And so we had, you know, we were at the table. We couldn't come to an agreement because they were like $500,000 too short.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, with the whole deal itself, I'm like, only 500,000. You can't come up with another 500 grand. Like, come on.
It's always the biggest bottleneck, what a buyer wants to pay and what a seller is prepared to sell for. And it goes back to why, like, understanding why.
Yeah.
Why is that person looking to, or, you know, team looking to sell? And because it's not always about the money. Sometimes you can help them achieve what they want to achieve, but approaching it in a slightly different way.
Well, we were going to maintain our ownership, like the 51 majority ownership.
Okay.
So we were in a good position. It was just the way things were structured out. But anyways, I know a little bit about that. Not that was my only experience, but I have some. Do you have a bottleneck, or not a bottleneck, a like threshold of the size of a business that you'll work with?
That's a brilliant question. So yes, when I started, I wouldn't look at anything below 500,000 in annual revenue.
Okay.
Now I'm a little bit further down the line. I wouldn't look at anything below 1 million at the very, very least. And the reason why that revenue sort of threshold is a good like level, like it's a good way to measure, is because if you've got a business doing 500,000, then the owner is almost certainly involved in the operations. That somewhere they're either doing sales or they're doing they're doing something. And so when you buy those businesses, what a lot of people again don't look at because of the rose tinted glasses is that they end up with a job, and that's not the goal here. So when you get to sort of 1 million plus, then there's normally a few more people, and the owner is typically still involved, but it's much easier to extract their response, like what they were doing, and to replace that and to have more of a team about it. So in Spectacular Group, the children's education group, I'm not involved at all day to day. I draw a salary, I own 100% of the equity, and I literally spend half a day a month sitting down on the board at a board meeting with the people who run that business for me, and that's the extent. But I didn't start there. Like, I had to go through those smaller ones, and it's a bit of a baptism by fire with understanding. No, this is like the threshold I'm going for. So.
That's awesome. Good. Well, congratulations to you for that, because I think every business owner aims for that. You know, like, love just to get it going and get to a place where they don't have to be involved as much. Tell us a little bit about your hobbies. You're an adventurer.
Yeah, well, this is how I sort of spend that time, really. So a lot of people ask, and I've had a lot of people approach me in the last sort of 18 months, 2 years, saying, how have you done this? Like, what, like what have you done here, and how can I do the same, is what they're really asking. And where it all switched for me, and I always say I don't really believe in secret sauce, but if there was a secret sauce, this is it, is that I truly prioritize my personal development and my personal growth above everything else. And so I have a very sort of structured morning routine. I'm up at 4 a.m. I'm reading, meditating, and I'm exercising. I'm doing a number of things. So by the time I start my day, or my daughter gets up around 7:30, I'm coming in as a higher version of myself. Now, that's sort of led on to me to competing in and participating in a number of endurance events, which I've always had just a love for. And so last year I participated in a 2-day event going across Scotland, which was running, cycling and kayaking across the lochs.
Wow.
In March of this year, we done a 5-day expedition in the Arctic Circle, which was phenomenal. We also climbed a mountain. We camped out one of the nights at -17 degrees, and then climbed a mountain. And then in June it was a 70-mile ultra marathon going from the northeast of England to the west. And then in November, I'm in the Spartan World Championships in Sparta in Greece, and the next March in Panama, doing a jungle trek from west coast to east coast. And so that's sort of that's how I like to spend my time, but it feeds directly back into the acquisitions in the business, because I'm living my life the way I want to live it. I find that I'm going into the business just a far better version of me, which has very tangible knock-on effects. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we were kind of talked about this before we started recording, that there is a common denominator amongst high achieving people, and typically it involves some kind of level of, personal development, physical, like their fitness, or competition. It kind of feeds that drive that we have. And so why do you think that is, actually? I want to ask you.
Why do we participate in those events?
Why do high achieving, successful entrepreneur, business owner type people tend to have some kind of hobby that is, includes personal development or physical fitness?
I think it's largely, or a big component of it, is to do for our own mental well-being, our mental health and well-being. I know for a fact, if I didn't participate in these events, and if I didn't, I just know for a fact that when I didn't have my structured routine, and when I wasn't as active in this, I was waking up at 2 a.m. with extreme anxiety and panic attacks, absolutely convinced that the world was going to end. And that was actually the wake-up call that really woke me up and led me to saying there has to be another way here. And so I think that's a major part of it. Even if no one's ever experienced those type of, or have those type of experiences, subconsciously there's something there where they need to get rid of that bad stuff and to keep them grounded.
Yeah, it's a great release. So when we're done, I have a couple recordings later. I'm going to the gym. I'm getting my cardio in. I'm gonna get my work in. So it keeps you sane. Totally agree. Adrian, love it all. Where can people find you, connect with you, and learn more maybe about your venturing, or maybe talk to you about maybe selling a business, or whatever that looks like, just to start a conversation with you?
Absolutely. So the best place is Instagram. I'm extremely active on Instagram. I post several times a day in terms of my story, and just share my life. Like, it's been so transformational, a lot of the personal development stuff that I've been doing, that I've just been wanting to share it with the world, really. So my handle is Adrian J Knights, Knights with a K. And I really sort of share everything from the 4 a.m. wake up all the way through to like Spectacular Group, and these are the businesses that we're like involved in, and through to the adventures as well. So I'm looking forward to sharing Greece in a few weeks. I'm gonna be following and watching. That's awesome. You guys, I'm gonna put that link in the show notes, so don't hesitate to go follow Adrian. Contact him if you liked what he shared or have any more questions. I'm sure he'd be happy to have a conversation with you, or if anything, just be motivated, inspired by his journey.
Adrian, this is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
Prioritizing yourself, particularly if you're a business owner, yourself tends to be the last thing on the list. You've got the business, you've got your family, you've got other stuff, and you tend to fall to the very bottom. But for me, the breakthrough came when I put me at the top and prioritized myself, and I created space for myself, starting with just half an hour, getting up half an hour earlier and using that time to invest in myself. So reading 10 pages of the book. That then evolved to including meditating, to working out, and so forth and so forth. And if you're hitting those barriers and you don't quite know what to do, that's the place to start. Put yourself first, create some space for yourself by getting up 30 minutes earlier, read 10 pages of the book and just roll with it. See how you feel after 30 days. And if you stick to it, you'll be amazed at how that can change things in a very short period.
Yeah, I totally agree. When I was, I'm a little bit more relaxed now because of, got remarried and life has changed. But while I was getting up at 4 a.m. to do my workouts, then I would go travel to the city to work. I had a corporate job, and I'd come back. I'd go to the gym again, and I was just at my peak. But I was also single. I had nothing going on around me, so it was like I could totally be selfish. Now I can't be as selfish because I have a husband now, so it's a completely different animal. But it definitely, when you prioritize yourself, things happen around you. They're almost kind of miraculous, I feel like.
You know what? I was speaking to someone about this morning. So one of my, someone who I'm sort of helping with this, who has a very good but high pressured corporate role and was going through everything, and is an amazing hands-on dad, doing really well in his job. And he was walking through his day, and I'm like, where's the time for you? Like, there's no time for you. And that's the key. Create that space with nothing to do with business, no emails. It's you.
Yeah.
That's the change. It's just, it's game changing.
I love it. Adrian, congratulations on all your success. Congratulations on your daughter being a motivation and inspiration for you to start your children's educational business. I think that's a beautiful thing, beautiful story. So I really love this conversation. And you had a lot of pearls of wisdom in here for people that are listening, especially with my entrepreneurs out there. Make sure you're taking notes, you guys. So thank you. Thank you very much, Adrian. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It truly is an honor and a pleasure for being on here. I just love what you're doing here. And I'm just absolutely honored to be to be on here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Adrian. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.